to hear my voice, the louder I will sing. You hide behind walls of Jericho, our lies will come tumbling. Deny my place in time, you squander wealth that's mine. My light will shine so brightly it will blind you.
Welcome to my first Pull Up Your Chair session, which promises to be volcanically frank, as you haven't heard me in a while. Our first edition is captioned, "Stop Circling the Drain. As a people, we need to speak up." Our history indicates to us that we have a lot of work to do on ourselves as a people. The high level of hypocrisy with which we function stems from our inability to speak up over the years. For all of slavery, our ancestors were treated as property, and so they could not dare speak up for fear that they would be ostracized and severely punished. So we developed the art of speaking out of turn and behind other people's backs about issues which we ought to speak up firmly about to their faces. From 1838 to the present, when the colonials realized they were losing grip on power through the abolition of slavery and the plantation system, they tried with special zeal to squeeze the last juice out of any semblance of compulsory labor before, as they put it, according to Sturge and Harvey, the great ruin of freedom set in. Then came mass leaders like Eric Gary, who thrived on the ignorance of the masses, and in order to maintain power, he tolerated no dissent, and therefore people continued to be afraid to speak up. He was overthrown by a group who expressed opposition to the high level of suppression under him during his time, and when they took over, they were even worse. Just like the menu our ancestors were fed during all of slavery, steeped in an abundance of sodium and starch, which resulted in our inheritance of lifestyle diseases like high blood pressure, diabetes, cancer, and poor immune systems, so had this constant suppression of freedom of speech contributed to our lack of ability to speak up as a people. Unfortunately, the very few of us who do are hated beyond measure and are made out to be wrong and even bad for so doing. What a lot of rot. It is a good thing I ain't taking on nobody when it comes to me speaking up. Who vex, they could read the text, as my deceased mother used to say, God rest her soul. So now that you have a sound background for the source of our inherent hypocrisy, you can well understand why even our supposedly big, mature men and women behave the way they behave. Needless to say, when we put their insecurities in the mix, that becomes a recipe for chronic pains victims feel of this tendency that we have to say one thing to people's faces and something completely different and worse behind their backs. What is so difficult about letting someone know how you truly feel? Do you really relish their friendship without realizing that it cannot be a true and meaningful relationship if you refuse to be honest throughout your association? You see, this dishonesty promotes false friends who are really true enemies among us. Generally, the people who speak up are hated, while those who refuse to speak up are admired and relished. I look at the people who, under the guise of remaining diplomatic and hold back with a measure of suspicion. We live in treacherous times where the only way to beat that is to confront dishonesty in others head on and tear it to pieces. Who vex, vex. I have said this before and I will say it again, not for the lack of being regarded as repetitive. I prefer to know where I stand with anyone I have dealings with. My few friends know that they are my friends and that their friends are not necessarily my friends. I also know that I have absolutely no control over what they do with whatever I may have told them and will tell them from time to time, because what I say, I will say without any fear of repercussions. It is the responsibility of anyone who knows the impact what was said can have on who they may tell or how they may take it and what they may do with it to either exercise restraint in repeating or nonchalance. That is a matter for them, not me, after I would have shared. This is how independent I am. When I am done, it is up to you. Full stop. We are in some very interesting times where change beckons. Change in attitude, change in mind, change in circumstances, change in leadership, change in prospects, change from instant gratification to medium to long-term sustainability, change in just about every aspect of our appreciation for life. If that does not happen, we are bound to hell without any hope of return. The change that we can see, smell, and taste must not be taken for granted. There would be lots of noise from the dying jackasses, which will only be emitted as distractions. Phase 1 of such noises has already been heard, with self-serving losers from within the organization of and for change making their stupidity known. You know that old saying? It's better to shut up and be thought a fool than to open your mouth and remove all doubt. Fortunately, people are not buying what they are selling, and wherever they were seeking sympathy, they instead received rebuke from the lack of traction and outlandish scorn from the few vocals like myself. Every time we listen to members of the new kids on the leadership block, we can be hearing positive stuff about the way forward for both the country and the organization, which was dying, mind you. This is a time when the only focus should be on maximizing votes. Their feeling of being deprived of any opportunity is not a priority item on the current national agenda, where change is so much more important and necessary. What does it matter whether these egotists feel opportunities that may be available should be theirs, and these said opportunities are not made available to them? After all, they must remember that the party voted for change on Sunday 31st October as the new crop of leaders going forward are not wanting to take any chance with stale hands who perfected the art of losing time and time again. But not only losing absolutely. The train has left the station, and who are on board are well on board. And that is why it is important for all who have a sour taste in their mouths from either their defeat or their otherwise rejection to understand and appreciate that their time for the roles they played is over. They need to become compliant passengers, since by their own poor performances in the past, they are disqualified from playing any other role. Show up at the polls on election day and do what you must. And if your oversized egos still fuel your vexation, you could exercise your free will to vote whoever you want to vote for. It is quite interesting that in one of the general elections in the 50s, the late Derek Knight QC ran as a candidate for the GULP in the town of St. George and lost to T. Albert Marisho quite badly. In fact, notwithstanding his crushing defeat, he went on to become the second most powerful political figure in Grenada after Eric Gairy for all of the life of Sir Eric's domination in Grenadian politics. He needs to be studied by all who consider themselves politicians in Grenada to find their relevance. So young people, you must not be deterred from your resolve to secure desirable change, which is long overdue in Grenada. Stay focused, keep your eyes on the prize, and don't allow the selfish wrangling of a few who have proved their unworthiness publicly just by their erratic behavior to distract you. Of course, you also have the efforts of those outside of the organization to distract you to contend with. Remember to dismiss the noise you are hearing from the disenchanted, senseless few within as the sound of denial that some people have graduated from could be to has been without ever being and is, and are prepared to dismantle the car because they cannot be the driver. As I said some time ago, some people need to know their place and realize that if they are stuck in mediocrity and suited to the current lolly drain, they need to choose their political side well. Stop pretending to be opposed to the lowest of lows, but duly qualified to be on that side of the fence by their dunce behavior, which shows them up as nothing but pedestrian spectacles. Let them know that they should temper their egos and behave their blasted selves, especially as they have been rejected twice too often, whether directly or indirectly, for them to hold any valid currency in today's climate that demands much needed change. Let them know that you are in control of creating the life you want and deserve as young people in this country. And that this time you are staining your fingers for change because your way of thinking and the way you view your future is dependent on change. So many people cannot get over the thought that these has-beens would be so foolish to ventilate their nonsensical behavior in the public sphere. These elements have proved they are without foundation to entertain the grandiose opinions they hold of themselves, and who lack capacity and substance to support such opinions of themselves. This is a sad reflection here in Grenada among so many dummies who, on account of the negligence of the enlightened, find themselves in leadership positions. But the truth is, all these people know is mawet, and therefore cannot see the greater good in any situation must always come first, because they feel without them nothing can happen, even though the experience is with them nothing happens. They forget to understand for something to really work effectively, there must be all-round congruency. For a relationship between two members of the opposite sex to take off, there must be reciprocity in the love or like between them. One cannot love or like the other without that love or like being returned. If this does not obtain, the only relationship that can result is a bad one. And that is why we have so many bad relationships among us. We are forging relationships for the wrong reasons, and most times with our own self-interests at the center. But you see, because lots among us are full of ego, we mix it up with pride. And so we argue to be right, push to get ahead, step over others to get there, and forget them once we get there. Pride, on the other hand, is peaceful service, joy-filled sharing, inner knowing that there is more to come and that my role may not be what I thought it to be. But if I quiet my mind, my truth will unfold in the right timing. When you are genuinely proud and humbled by your actual reality, you do give and share rather than take, talk and promise and can't deliver. Here in Grenada, during this tempestuous windstorm of serious change blowing all around us, we have dying mules and jackasses who never knew their place in the first place, jostling for positions, even though they have been rejected time and time again. The abject hypocrisy is being played out in the public domain, much to their relegation as pedestrian spectacles. We have certain people who want to be kingmakers of dummies, who have been known to pretend to be eternally opposed to the kleptocracy and parasitic oligarchy that we have been privy to over the greater part of the last 26 years, embracing people close to the opposing side to vent about the necessary changes which are being made to right position a perpetually losing organization to respond to the changes on the horizon. All delegates of the main opposition National Democratic Congress, NDC, must be applauded for their strong statement to these perpetual losers on Sunday, 31st October 2021, resulting in the first phase of change in preparation to take the party to the main activity to transform this nation altogether. Their culture to lose is so profound and ingrained that it must be a part of the DNA of these gripers. Their habit to burn a whole church to kill a mouse is so inherent that they cannot see the trees for the forest. These dimwits cannot see that indirectly their attitude and behavior have been beneficial to the side they say they are against, and hence, as long as they continue to promote their abject selfishness, they were only qualified to receive 15-0. Yet for all, they went to college and university. But I could not help but agree with the retired CEO of Hubbard's, Mr. Alan Bierzinski, when he said years ago that thanks to his deceased parents, God rest their souls, for not having sent him to university, because he may have returned as dunce and stupid as many of them who went. And hence, I have no reservation in declaring these dimwits in our politics as having graduated a second time in real life with a PhD in 15-0. Yet for all, want to still consider themselves relevant. They may be relevant in truth and in fact, but only to losing, and losing absolutely. Thank you for your time. Sure trust you found this instructive and mentally stimulating. even though it may be considered pungently off the chain to haters. Continue to stay tuned, as there is a lot more where this has come from, and as the season for straight talk heats up, I remind you all to get involved. Go out and register to do the right thing for the desired change this nation so deserves. Thanks for pulling up your chair and paying attention. Grenadians, we need to stop circling the drain. As a people, we need to speak up when we need to and stop allowing people you hire to work for you muffle you into silence and abject hypocrisy. In the meantime, stay safe, well, and remain lifted. Until next time.
Brothers and sisters, when they insist we're just not good enough, when we know better, just look them in the eyes and say, we're gonna do it anyway, gonna do it anyway. Something inside so strong, and I know that I can make it, though you're doing me wrong, so wrong, because they're my pride.